There's been a whole sea change, especially when I've seen in Alberta, where they are turning around and saying where you have those liberal policies that are just, it's a sustained welfare system to pretty much keep people down. They see them as voters. They don't see them as peoples. We work together as individuals, as peoples. They're a nation, we're a nation. And and energy, oil and gas, and there's renewables are in the mix too, everything, just business as a whole. Let's all work together for our own shared prosperity.
Realize that these projects are being built by Canadians, the Canadians that are concerned about the environment, Canadians that want prosperity to include First Nations, then they become embraced by First Nation leaders, and that's what we're doing.
Adam Soos here for Rebel News. There are many within media and politics who would like you to believe that energy development is somehow at odds with First Nations communities, but this could not be further from the truth. The energy sector is the largest private sector employer of First Nations people, period, and it is estimated that 44% of First Nations communities here in Alberta will benefit from energy sector growth. Energy development is, in the minds of many, the clearest path forward in terms of bringing prosperity and hope to these communities and in terms of tackling poverty in a meaningful way. I'm here at this year's National Council of Chiefs Energy and Natural Resource Summit, where First Nations leaders are meeting at Tsuut'ina Nation just outside of Calgary, Alberta, to discuss the role of energy development in tackling on-reserve poverty.
This level of involvement ensures that First Nations have a substantial say in the development and management of the resources on their lands.
Canada's oil and natural gas sector is one of the biggest employers of Indigenous people, providing the highest wages in Canada. And not only that, we have come a long way, and we are providing real meaningful economic reconciliation through actual equity ownership in major energy projects. And I think it's a terrific success story.
We're just really excited to be here. One of the things that we did today was sign a ceremonial MOU with the National Coalition of Chiefs. So it's just both organizations' commitment to furthering that understanding and supporting getting skilled workers into the workforce, and really ensuring that we're doing that with an eye to how we can effectively manage that, both from an employee and employer perspective, to fill the gaps that we know the Alberta business community has.
Leaders have been looking for this opportunity to partner up, buy equity into natural resource projects. I mean, some people suggest that, during the last 150 years, there have been $19 trillion worth of natural resources taken out of this country, and First Nations were never a part of it. Now we get an opportunity with Enbridge and TC Energy coming up front and offering equity that's important to us, because it's all about infrastructure, it's about natural resources, oil and gas, mining, you name it. So we advocate for the natural resource industry, including the oil and gas industry. We're arguing against unfair legislation like C-48, C-69, and now the critical C-59, which is it's in the Senate right now. So we're concerned very greatly about that, and so should Canadians. And I think that's important. And you see with the people here, and the 14,000 self-identified First Nation individuals working in the oil and gas sector, they need a voice, and we need to be able to speak out for them.
We want Haida owned and operated. Mm-hmm. We need partnerships with the expertise to come in and help us. And that's been said so many times off the podium in this morning. We're all looking for help from other agencies that could teach us how to better benefit out of the opportunities that are on our doorstep.
We need to understand better as industry. They have the solutions. They know what the problems are. They've lived them for multiple generations. They have the solutions. And so that's why, again, it's so critical that we get the organizations that are in the room today together.
Our sector is, again, one of the biggest employers, biggest users of Indigenous suppliers. And again, we're starting to see them as our investors with equity ownership leadership in projects. So they have a really big stake in government policy and regulation that's impacting the oil and natural gas industry, and their voices are very important, and they're very powerful, and they should be heard. By far the biggest challenge we have here in Canada is policy and regulatory complexity. It's not competitive with our neighbor to the south. It's not competitive globally, and it's really impeding the growth of our industry and the growth and prosperity of all Canadians and Indigenous communities.
There's been a whole sea change, especially when I've seen in Alberta, where they are turning around and saying where you have those liberal policies that are just, it's a sustained welfare system to pretty much keep people down. They see them as voters. They don't see them as peoples. We work together as individuals, as peoples. You know, they're a nation, we're a nation. And and energy, oil and gas, and there's renewables are in the mix too, you know, everything, just business as a whole. Let's all work together for our own shared prosperity. What Dale Swampy NCC does is it encourages people. They don't want the handout anymore, or they got the hand up. Let's work together. They own a lot of resources on their lands, and so let's just get together and. Again, it's a whole different mentality, but that's true reconciliation doing through, partnerships, especially in the energy industry, because oil and gas, I'm sorry, isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, the government passed this bill in 1931 that took our resources, and we want that back. We want participation, we want equity, and it's about sovereignty, and that's all we care about. So I'm the seventh generation from treaty. Expect and will make decisions through non-political means to move our agenda to transitional energy.
Well, the communities are going to be here forever, and that's something that natural resources is starting to embrace. The idea that a big mine like the giant mine Northwest Territories goes and mines gold and copper for 50, 70 years and then goes bankrupt, and the only ones that are really reaping the tragedy that has created is the First Nations, because they have been and always will be there. And so it's important for us to be the stewards of the land, be the environmental protectors of this country, and in order to do so, we want to see responsible natural resource development.
There's often sort of an image in the industry, or at least in media and politics, that there's a sort of an industry, then there's First Nations communities, and they're at odds. People on the inside know that isn't true, but if you could maybe just comment on the sort of at least burgeoning healthy relationship between these two groups, communities.
Well, I think once communities start to understand the amount of resources, the amount of capacity that's being developed to protect the environment, they tend to support the project, because they now have a vested interest in not just risk in ownership of a project, but in their ability to be able to manage the environmental protection plans that these industries develop. And for us to be able to have input into that gives us a lot of surety and a lot of resolution to a lot of issues and concerns we have regarding environmental protection. And it's always about what you don't know. And once you start to realize that these projects are being built by Canadians that are concerned about the environment, Canadians that want prosperity to include First Nations, then they become embraced by First Nation leaders. And that's what we're doing.
The way we're working right now, we're able to talk to industry and get them in the room now. Mm-hmm. And the beauty about having that ability to talk to industries, we can help them set the standards, eh?
Our industry is a very critical piece of the energy transition, and we have a very strong demonstrated record of reducing emissions while concurrently being able to increase production. If you look at the government's own data with the national inventory, most recent inventory report, we have a meaningful decades plus track record of doing that, and we're on track to meet methane targets as well. So we're a critical piece of the puzzle. We are among the largest spenders on clean technology in innovation in Canada, and we can't get there without our sector.
The best example of all is what we have right here in Tsuut'ina Nation. They have what's called Taza. It's a huge development. Now, it borders my ward, so I've watched that grow, but it's just, you've got a Costco, you've got car washes, you've got Tim Hortons, and it's going to be entertainment district. It's everything. Car dealerships. It's a big, huge development that's done in cooperation with First Nations and other levels of government. And that's what we got to do. We got to empower our First Nations friends to work together to end poverty on reserves.
And we're seeing such great examples of this across the province of Alberta in terms of where industry is really effectively and collaboratively engaging the Indigenous communities. The employment rates are just skyrocketing in that sector, and it's just wonderful to see, and that's what we need to do. These types of events are perfect for us to get together and have these conversations, learn about where this is being done really well, and how can we, take that model and move it to other jurisdictions across the province.
We would like to connect with in the labor industry too, because we have about 700 workers right now sitting on their reservations, hoping that we can connect with mining contractors, businesses, whoever where we place our people. And that's why we're here, was to make those connections as to how we can do that. We have the workers who are ready to move forward. But how do we get past? How do we actually put boots on the ground? That's where we're stuck right there.
Right.
So contractors, if you're looking to hear this message, like, hey, look at aswa.ca and look at our database, and if we can help you to provide what you're looking for, we'll gladly work with you.
Are we perhaps sort of undercrediting First Nations communities when we talk about only tackling poverty? Should we be looking at the fact that First Nations communities could become a major driving force, an engine, not just for their own communities, but for all of Canada?
That's right, and that's why we want to take control over natural resources. All you got to look at is the 13 bills of Congress in Alaska and see the kind of natural resource development, sustainable and responsible development that those 13 corporations have done for the state of Alaska. And all you got to do is talk to the governor there, who was married to a First Nation person from there, and their 3 daughters are miners. So it's important to understand that we have to have a concerted, and if we're not just equity owners, then we can lead the projects, and we can develop these projects to make Canada a leader in responsible development of natural resources.
You just have to look to Northern Alberta, the Fort McMurray region, to see how this is being done very well in those relationships around the First Nations communities and all the other communities surrounding them, how they're partnering, how they're working together with, not just the communities, but with industry, with government, and those collaborations are having huge impacts on those communities.
When I go back to my community too, we're thinking that we can run a green economy and we could live off tourism. They want to put the end to logging. They don't want mining. They're dead against oil and gas, even though that's what runs our homes and stuff. Yeah. It makes it challenging from that aspect, but we've seen industries die in our community, like the fishing industry, the logging industry. The logging is just the shadow of it, what it was in the 60s. And that's by environmental movement too. But when we talk about enhancing our futures, in my community, if we did added value to the logging industry, would be building homes and stuff like that for the rest of the world that wanted them. Yeah. That's a beauty of opportunity, and if your community's willing to capitalize on it, then everyone's going to benefit. Awesome. And we live in a different society because we're a community of family. And that comes with a lot of special challenges too, because, even your favorite cousin doesn't have the capacity to do the job. They still need the money, so they help them out to get them up into those positions. But we need more expertise in all our communities, and we got to be honest about it. Yeah. And if we're not honest about it, we're going to fail in that arena.
If you believe that First Nations communities deserve an opportunity to not only tackle poverty but grow wealth within their communities, you have to support energy development. Radical environmental activists would love to see the economic progress and growth that these communities have seen erased overnight. And frankly, that's a blow that many First Nations communities cannot endure. If you support First Nations communities becoming active and tackling poverty, and you reject the woke narrative that is anti-energy, sign our petition at nogreenreset.com.